Good afternoon, members, officers and members of the public. My name is John Cater, Clerk to the committee. The public element of today's meeting is being live streamed in accordance with City Corporation's policies, and the recording shall be retained for up to 1 year. Chairman.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Well, welcome everybody. I think a few will just sneaked in on time. Welcome everybody watching online. Let's move on, Town Clerk, please.
Chairman, thank you. Item 1, in advance of today's meeting, I've received formal apologies from Shannon Back, Deputy Bethany Coombs, Alderman Prem Goyle, Deputy Madhush Gupta, Alderman Martha Grekos, Stephen Hodgson, Deputy Paul Martinelli, Deputy Benjamin Murphy. Mr. Murphy has joined us online as observer today. Hugh Selker, Deputy Sir Michael Snyder, James Tunbridge, and Deputy Christopher Hayward.
Thank you. Let's keep moving. No declarations on number 2, I'm assuming. Nothing new. Nope. Town Clerk, should we move on to the minutes?
Thank you, Chairman. Item 3 are the public minutes of our last meeting on the 4th of June. These are for decision pages 7 through 14.
Any comments on these? I think they should be pretty accurate. I'm taking that as read. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 4 is the committee's forward plan. This is the report of the Chamberlain. For information, page 15.
Members, very clearly, April 25 and June 25 should get struck off. This should be a rolling six meetings ahead, so that will be changed next time around. But you can see roughly the items that are forecast to turn up over the course of the next 4 meetings. Anyhow, I don't think there's anything to add, Town Clerk, is there? No, thank you. Can we note that, please? Thank you. Okay, we'll read that.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 5 is the public update of the Projects and Procurement Subcommittee meeting on the 16th of June, and this is for information, Chairman.
We haven't got anything here. The chairman of Project Procurement is online. He's asked me just to comment that they had quite a big meeting at the last meeting. They approved the Pan London Sexual Health e-service contract approval, which was approved by court last week. And he has highlighted that the responsible procurement impact report is on its way, and it will be starting to break down barriers for small and micro businesses, which is an important step. He's got nothing else to comment on, other than the fact we've got quite a big paper next time, which was the main topic of discussion at Projects Procurement. We note that. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Turning then to item 6, the new project procedure. This is a report of the Chamberlain for decision, pages 17 through 44.
So, members, I'm going to pass this over to Janine in Ben's absence. The procurement code has been really unwieldy and non-user friendly for far too long. It was very much based on local authority guidelines, which I think, in my view, preferred style over substance. And it's been through quite a lot of a review, both by Projects Procurement Sub, which agreed it last week, subject to some minor non-material changes which they want to bring through. I'm not going to say anything more, and I think this is going to be the first phase, potentially, of a number of phases here. But what we're trying to do is to cut through the very much process-driven system here, make it a lot simpler, make it more efficient, make it quicker, make it more flexible, actually, because we do have also some entities such as the schools and City Bridge Foundation, which are not local authority run entities, and therefore they need some flexibility. But I'm going to hand over to Janine just to summarise where the work that's happened so far, plus the conclusions of Projects and Procurement last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Whilst I absolutely agree with your comments on the procurement code, just to clarify, today is the project procedure that we're looking at, which I'm really excited to introduce to the committee. We've been working on this for the past 2 years, since the direction of travel was kind of endorsed by this committee and Policy Resources back in July 2023. It's been a really important piece of work for the corporation. We have had kind of lots of learning over the last couple of years around our internal capacity and capability to manage projects and programmes well, and that has all been fed into the new policy framework that you have before you. I want to just quickly acknowledge that we've had great support from members, particularly the two previous past chairmen of project procurement sub or their previous iterations, but also the new chairman, Deputy Murphy, has been really helpful in getting us to this point. I would dare to even suggest at times perhaps straying beyond the role of a member in helping us get the drafting right, but it's all been welcomed in making sure that not only is the framework robust, but also that actually it's really easy to use and user friendly. I will note that this went to City Bridge Foundation Board earlier today, who are also supportive of this, as it does apply to all projects and programmes delivered by the organisation. There is one point I think that Deputy Murphy did want to raise, which was a question around the tiering process that we have set out. The tiering that we've set out was what was endorsed by PNR back in July 2023. Deputy Murphy has pointed out that it works backwards. So as in the largest, most valuable, most complex programmes are tiered 0, and the smallest ones are tiered 3. Deputy Murphy has suggested that that might feel counterintuitive. I think we can look at that. It's not a substantive issue, but that is the model we've been working on for the last 2 years and what we've socialised with the organisation so far. But I will just pause there. Thank you, Chairman.
I have to say, I sympathise with this thinking on that. It feels instinctively that tier 4 should be higher than tier 1. But any questions? Ronnie?
I thought it was a great piece of work. One sort of niggle that I had is that once a red project agrees a re-baseline plan with the Services Committee and PPSC, whoever they are, it can proceed as a green project. That's fine once. What happens if it happens again and then again and then again? Because actually you need some mechanism for tracking serial delays. Otherwise, if you have one blip green, one blip. That was my only sort of wrinkle.
Thank you. Any more comments? Sandra?
Just one to endorse the point that I think this is a really good piece of work. It's very helpful. And to particularly commend the presentation of the risk at the end in Appendix B. Since I've been here, which isn't very long, it's probably the first risk register that I've been able to read, understand, absorb, and actually say I fully agree with it. So thank you very much.
That's some praise, Janine. Do you want to pick up Ronnie's question?
Yes, no, I think that's a really valid challenge. And I think what we now have is a really robust portfolio management system in the Cora system that we have been rolling out. And that will have all the kind of version control and that change history. So absolutely, we can flag where things a bit, and we'll make sure that the approval, it's not that projects could just approve that rebaselining themselves. Depending on the value, it would have to go either to the Town Clerk's Portfolio Board or to committee members. But we can make sure in the reporting that that is really clear and that it can be dealt with and kind of supported to get that right in going forward.
Okay, thank you. Any more, Adam?
It's just a plea, really, particularly for new members. The number of pages of this report and the appendices was, I think, 59. Sorry, my addition is wrong, 57. And it would be terribly helpful if we didn't have quite so many bits of paper.
Adam, I'm fully in support. I would love to get. I did undertake to try and end up with 2-page reports and the rest in an appendix, but I think we'll keep on pushing on that front. I do think a 2-page summary is really what most members really want to think properly.
I think this deserved more than 2, but
I know,
57.
No, thank you. I think we all sympathise there. Thank you. Can we then, Nick?
Thanks, Chairman. It's a small one, and I note this is a good piece of work and it's dealing with the big stuff. So this is just a question on the smaller stuff, as it were. So on the scope of the framework, noting that this will apply for 250k upwards rather than 50, support all of that. But does it actually leave us in a vulnerable position at all in terms of the sub 250 because things don't receive the same scrutiny or help? Thanks.
And we picked that up pointing forward over. Ginny, can you pick that? Can you answer that as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valid challenge. So sub 250 will come under kind of chief officer oversight. What we're developing is making sure that the new enterprise portfolio management office, so the corporate kind of centre of excellence, are able to support services in kind of handling that well. There'll be a new policy and programme management framework, which has all the kind of guidance, tools, new training, and people will be able to draw on the corporate centre to make sure there is help there. And also, things that fall under 250 are likely to still be subject to other kind of governance framework, so i.e. the procurement governance framework, and because my teams are joined up, procurement, but it gives us that kind of oversight across the whole kind of landscape of what's happening. So I think it is absolutely right to flag, and I think that's something that we're going to have to track and monitor and make sure it's going well. But I do feel that we are putting in place mitigations that should, hopefully that isn't a common measure, but it's something that we will absolutely have to monitor.
And I think they'd be quite good to have a summary of projects under the 250, just so we're not getting involved in them, but we can see what's going on. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, just to come back on Nick's point and Bronic's point. So I raised this at Project Sub, and I said it'll be good not just for the 250 level, but for all the tiers from tier 0 to tier 3, for this committee to have a reporting control report that comes to us. So we don't need to see the actual detail, but to say this is what was done in this tier, this tier, this tier, and this tier. So there's a control mechanism. So we have oversight of it. And to Bronic's point in terms of what happens if it happens again and again and again. And that's something I raised from an assurance perspective, especially if budgets are being moved from capital to revenue and the costs are not. So I know the officers have that, but again, that'll come back, I'm assuming, in form of from a control reporting perspective.
Thank you. I think we're able to agree that subject to any non-material changes that we've been talked about. Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7 is a resolution from the Community and Children's Services Committee to the Finance Committee. This is for decision, page 45. I
think this is quite straightforward, members. I made this point when I presented our budget in March, that the proposed second home premium, whatever that raised, might go towards homelessness, which I think raised a bit of a debate. But I think the budget was put through with quite a lot of support for that concept. Personally, I have to say, I declare a hand. I'm very keen on any sort of hypothecated line of income and expenditures. I think it's really easy to understand. Officers may have a slightly different take on that, but I think this resolution is a bit odd in that I think we need, subject to your agreement, obviously, I think heading 1 is, yes, the revenue, I think, on second homes, which I'm reliably told now by officers, but Phil Black is here, is estimated not less than £2.5 million for the current year. It may go a bit more, but I think let's take £2.5 million as a likely number. That's what's going to be generated from the second hour premium. So I think number 1 is fine, but 2 and 3 I think are a bit odd, because I think once the line of income has been crystallised, let's say it's £2.5 million, I think then the responsibility for children's and community services to allocate and monitor that expenditure. It's not for Finance Committee. So and lastly, in the same vein, I think CCS should ensure transparency in the application of the funds, depending on how they spent it. So I think sort of 2 and 3 are actually the wrong way around. I get the sense that CCS has asked us, but before I ask you just for any other comments, can I just ask the Chamberlain to comment on that, Caroline?
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I have a different view on the ring fencing. And the rationale for that is that as we face the fair funding review, that is going to be a considerable impact on our finances going forwards. Yes, we may get transitional relief, but there's a definite reduction in the grant coming our way. So if that is the case, ring fencing any areas of our income to specific initiatives becomes problematic. So my advice is that you don't, and MHCLG are having accepted that across the piece for having ring fence sums of money and ring fence small grants for specific purposes. They are rowing back on that, and part of the consultation that they've currently got out is to do just that. What I would suggest is that if members are minded to do anything of this ilk, that it is reviewed annually. But as I say, my advice is not to ring fence. We have budget overspends in homelessness. You'll be aware that our homelessness figures went up by well over 20%. We are busting the budgets on it right now. So this money will, obviously goes towards plugging that anyway. But I will pause there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Steve.
Thanks, Chair. Well, it's a weird organisation, the corporation, isn't it? Because I'm Deputy Chair of CCS, but I certainly didn't propose this motion. But equally, I didn't vote against it. But equally, I lean towards where the Chamberlain is with this. I mean, I think that the whole issue of homelessness in the city of London, in Greater London, is problematic because, of course, homeless people can travel around, and you can, if you provide really good services. And I had a lot of experience with this when I worked in Hackney. You can be a magnet for homeless people, rough sleepers. So whereas on the one hand, I think this is the chair of the subcommittee would propose this to start with, whereas we should be providing really good services. I think we need to be doing that very much in partnership with local authorities in London, and particularly those close to us. But what I'm unclear about in this motion, maybe I should be more clear about it, is that, as the Chamberlain says, we're already spending significant amounts of money on homelessness services. I don't think this is asking for the 2.5 million that the chair now says we're going to get, in addition to what we are already spending. And there are some complex issues. So I think we're going to lose some government funding around homelessness. So I just wonder whether the way forward, perhaps, Chair, is that yourself and the chair of CCS, and you could involve the deputies as well, actually have a meeting to discuss the best way forward on this, rather than actually go one way or the other on this motion. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Oliver?
I think I agree and have very little to add. I think there are good reasons for looking at this with care, and I'm not in favour. Thank you.
Any other comments? James?
Yeah, I have to say I'm not in favour of hypothecating this. I think it potentially sets a bit of a precedent. I think you then end up having all sorts of unintended consequences. So, you know, if the second homes tax was to be removed, you know, what does that mean? We reduce homeless funding? I would hope we wouldn't, if you know what I mean. And, you know, if we then have, you know, annual review cycles, I just think we create bureaucracy for the sake of rather unnecessarily. I see it in the police funding, where we have so many pots that are ring fence, and actually it creates some really helpful, unhelpful, unintended consequences. I just wouldn't support it, but I do think, you know, but that does not mean that I don't think we should be looking at how we fund homelessness. Of course we should, and that's really important. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think, can I pick up Steve's idea? It seems to be that I think we have to note this. Might I suggest that we support the sentiment contained within the in this resolution, and ask the chairman of the finance and deputy chairman of finance, plus the other two of CCS, to meet up and see if they can find a way to achieve achieve the actual sentiment in the resolution. I haven't worded that very well, but I mean, you can see what I'm coming from.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, if the sentiment seems to be around hypothecating, I think, shouldn't we just be expressing our support of homelessness, you know, homelessness appropriate funding, but actually say we are not going to support hypothecating.
That's
funding.
what I mean. Okay. I think support the sentiment of supporting the homeless. Leave it like that. Town Clerk, are you able to put that into sort of plain English? Nick.
But also just to come back to Finance Committee with whatever the conclusions are.
No, absolutely. Okay. Okay, well, that's well, thank you very much. That was Chamberlain, you're happy with that, I think. Yes. Thank you. All right, let's move on then, please. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 8 is the 24-25 outturn report for City Fund and City's Estate. For information, page 47 to 60.
This, I think, is Daniel. Members, I have asked in future, not least because of last week, but I'm really conscious that we still got a little bit of misunderstanding about the purposes and ability of the two funds, that actually these sorts of papers are now split into two much more clearly between City Estate and City Fund. So I think that's where we're going to carry on in future. But I think in terms of this paper per se, it does split up these items. Daniel, did you want to add? Where is Daniel? Anyway, Daniel, did you want to add anything to your paper?
I can just give a very brief overview, if that would be helpful, Chairman. Yeah, so absolutely take the comments around the clarification between the two funds. So we'll pick that up in the Q1 monitoring this year. Just to pick out a couple of particular points. So just to note, this is the draft outturn, because obviously the position is subject to audit for both funds, which we're underway with. But yeah, at the moment, obviously the position is draft. So taking each fund in turn, City Fund, we've got an overall underspend on the revenue budget of 23.4 million. And the main thing to note on this, which is a similar position for City Fund and Cities Estate, is that underspend is consists of an overspend on the local risk budgets, which are the budgets that are within under the control of chief officers, but a significant underspend on the central risk budget, which offsets. The main reason for the big underspend on the central risk budgets is we got a lot more interest on our balances than we had forecast in the budget. The thing to just note on that underspend is, whilst it's an underspend on the budget, we have been forecasting that for the majority of the year. So it is already included in our MTFP assumptions going forward. So it doesn't give us anything additional to what we're already looking at for our budget setting going forwards. But as a in-year position, it is an upside. And just to look on the capital side for City Fund, which is shown in table 5, we've got an underspend in the year, or sorry, I should say kind of a slippage reprofiling of about 150 million of the programme. So that represents about 33% of the budget we set at the start of the year that hasn't been spent. As I said, the majority, if not all of that, is expected to be reprofiled into future years. So it's more of a timing thing. For Cities Estate, again, if you look at the overall revenue underspend, is 5.6 million, consisting of an overspend on local risk and an underspend on central risk. The underspend on central risk here is more to do with additional dividend income rather than interest on balances. And again, if you look at the capital information, which is on table 7, we've got an underspend of about 30 million, or again, slippage reprofiling on the capital programme of about 30 million, which represents about 25% of the budget at the beginning of the year. So obviously, when we look at capital, whilst the profiling of the spend, we can kind of move between years. The big risk there is if schemes aren't progressing as planned, we might then lose out on the revenue benefits, which then have a knock-on impact on the budget. So we'll be reviewing that and considering the impact of that going forward. So I wasn't going to add any more for that, Chair, but happy to take any other questions.
No, thank you. Can I just add one small, slightly related one, is that we also ought to congratulate the Chamberlain's team. The City Fund accounts have now reached the pre-audit stage, which is exactly on time and schedule, which is a great result. So we're not there yet, but it's making very good progress. So well done, Chamberlain's team. Any questions, members? Adam.
Sorry, I had quite a bit of difficulty in understanding all these papers because I'm new. I'm looking very forward, very much indeed, to being briefed on the whole budgeting process and how it all works. And I think I'm probably not alone amongst the new councillors.
Thank you. We will take that up. Thank you. Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. Second paragraph, which says this is largely due to inflationary increases that exceeded the annual uplift factored into the budgets. One of the reasons I suspect for that is that the allowance for inflation wasn't commensurate with how much it was. So the next question is, for the budget, for the current budget, has that been rectified? And my other question, well, my other point is, if we didn't budget properly for the increase, the inflationary increases, does that mean that in our fees and charges, where we should be operating on a full cost recovery basis, that we haven't achieved that? Has that also been put right?
That's a very good point. I think Stephen.
Yeah, I think I might have asked this question a year or two ago, but when we've got huge slippage on our capital programme, what is the financial implication of that? Because I presume the money that we're not spending is invested, but what danger is there that slippage means that we're going to pay more money for the capital works to be done? So is there a net benefit or not to that?
Andrew, I got ask officers to comment on that, but
yeah, so I had a question as well linked to what Steve's just said. So apart from what Steve's mentioned, also what's the actual impact in the delivery of the service? So for example, if I'm making this up, by the way, folks, if we were expected to spend X amount on capital to deliver X amount of something, does that mean because we've spent less, we have not delivered X amount of something? So in terms of the actual service delivery, so that's the question. And just one observation as well, Chair. Members, I know when you look at these numbers, it looks like massive underspends on revenue, massive underspends on capital. And I know there's an agenda item later on in the paper. I think the importance of that paper later on shows that maybe going forward, all is not as rosy as this particular paper makes out. That's the observation point, Chair, that I wanted to make.
No, thank you. Caroline, do you want to pick up?
Yes.
I think it's The delay on capital is a really key one. I think we're going to pick up the budget process actually a little bit later as well.
We'll pick up the budget
yeah,
assumptions.
thanks.
Someone is going to take us through those. I think I'll pick up the capital one first, because I think that is it's a really good question on what are the benefits. So we're getting upside from it, i.e. we're keeping the monies that would otherwise have been spent at a time when interest rates are fairly high, we're earning on it. So when you look at City Fund, and the bulk of the central risk benefit came from the slippage at the 300 million slippage in the capital programme, and having 300 million more to keep invested in money market funds than we would have had. The downside, though, can be huge. So if I take, for example, and you'll see it in the risk register as well, the HRA. So the capital slippage of not delivering new units for housing puts inordinate stress on the housing revenue account. We're expecting that income in, and that income is needed to do the repairs and maintenance on the current stock. So the non-delivery of that scheme 2 timeframes is a huge risk to this organisation and the HRA. That said, when we look at those are ones that, you know, I can quote to you and we know about. It's more what's under the hood that we don't know about, that isn't, you know, a red risk. And I think the work that Janine's team are doing with Project Cora, and being able to get oversight now of which projects are slipping by time and by money, but, you know, by time, and getting that assessment through. So my suggestion there is this is something that I expect that the Projects and Procurement Subcommittee will really like to get under the hood of. And if there are particular schemes that need to be called in to understand the ramifications of what that slippage means, I think that's the place to do it. The other question was on fees and charges. And I think, again, a really good area for a hunting ground of whether we've actually set our fees and charges at appropriate levels, and it's one of the work streams within the income generation side of the transformation agenda. So part of the concern is whether we've actually got all the costs associated with these services actually charged as part of the pricing model, and have we included all of that. So again, that's a piece of work which Sonia's team will be picking up with Janine's team as we go forward. I think we've got work to do on that point. And then to the Deputy Chairman's point about the underspends being you know, a great position to be in this year, but let's not get too comfortable, because what's coming down the track is anything but comfortable. This assists us in tackling certainly the deficit we're forecasting for 2026-27, and enables us to do some smoothing in the medium-term financial planning, which is what the team have been doing. And as we understand the ramifications for the fair funding review, we will be having discussions with MHCLG about transitional relief. And that whole aspect of understanding significant upsides, significant downsides, we're talking tens of millions either way. Those are the things we really need to get our head around as we go into the autumn with Policy and Resources Away Day. I think we'll also be looking very carefully at that.
Thank you. I just say, I think one completely got the point about explaining the budget process. We will pick up a little bit of that in a minute, but I think Andrew is absolutely right. The outlook for City Fund is very, very difficult, and we'll come again to that later. It's the transitional funding is critical or not. And as Caroline said, we're talking about tens of millions of pounds. I think I really like a Park Tim point. It's something we've always known. We don't really understand what our costs are. I don't quite know how we deal with that, but I just don't want to lose sight of it, because it's really, really important that we do get to the stage where we do understand what our costs are when we are charging. And I haven't got an answer for you, but I just don't want to lose sight of it. So I'm going to ask the town clerk to make sure that is picked up in the minutes appropriately. Thank you. I think we can accept that paper. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 9 is the revenue outturn 24-25 for the Finance Committee's operational services. This is a joint report of the Chamber and Town Clerk, City Surveyor, the Remembrancer, and the Director of Community Insurance Services. For information, page 61.
I don't think, Sonia, do you want to comment to this?
Very briefly, Chairman. So this is the outcome position for 24-25 for this committee. Just in relation to, there is a small overspend on overall, which is 128,000, which is laid out in section 2 of the report, page 62. Also to note, there is that the carry forward requests that have been put forward by the departments will be subject to discussions with the Chamberlain and Deputy Chair and Chairman and Deputy Chairman of RASC to go through those areas. In relation to any overspends, that discussion will also be taking place at that meeting and obviously will be updated through the Q1 process. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. And I think from my perspective, I think we're going to be pretty robust on carry forward requests now. I think we have to be. So that's my position. My answer at the moment is no, unless there's a very good reason. But anyhow, we can see where that takes us. Can we note paper 9? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 10 is the update on budget setting for 26-27 for information.
So, Sonia, you got a one-page presentation. This just for Adam's benefit. What we start is, it's a really long process, is budget planning, but essentially we've come up with some high level assumptions, which Sonia's going to just take you through, and they're very high level. Are going to appear on a bit of paper in a minute. These are these, if they were agreed by RASC last week, I think we should agree them, hopefully, and that will then start quite an extensive modelling process to allow us to run these numbers through the books. And you can see that there are there's some issues about tax rises. They also have a political connotation. But Sonia, do you want to very, very quickly just take us through those points? And I think you've taken out. We have got some. The small items are gone. No, that's good. Thank you. You've updated it. All right. Now, just take us through these at the very high level. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We did take RASC through a presentation, and one of the opportunities that we will be providing members, and particularly new members, is breakfast briefings to take you through the modelling. And I'm not sharing you the what we shared with RASC because things have changed drastically, so that will be updated through the member briefings. What RASC has given steers around for the 26-27 budget steers is around uplifting inflation at a net local risk at 3%, whereas inflation is currently at 3.5% at this point in time. We are also recommending that the budgets are uplifted for the July pay award once these have been agreed. Modelling impact of Ambition 25. Re-establishing the capital bids process. Now, some members will note that over the last couple of years, there's been a pause on the capital process, mainly to allow officers to catch up with the existing programmes that have already been approved. Identify 12 million cash savings to be delivered by 27-28. Members also supported modelling in tax rises at the referendum level of 4.99% on corporate on council tax and adult social care. And also there was a discussion around business rates premium. Whilst I had put a recommendation of 0.1 pence in the pound, smaller and often increases, members asked us to look at uplifting this up to 0.4 pence in the pound. So that is something that we will be modelling as part of budget setting steers. Modelling opportunity to look at the smoothing of using reserves to address the 26-27 gap on city fund, but also to look at options around how do we support our major projects capital programmes going forward. For cities estate, again, the inflationary uplift is the same. The pay award is the same. The impact of Ambition 25, the budget for establishing the capital bids is at 5 million as opposed to 10 million, which is what is deemed as affordable. And also we would also look at smaller additional budget uplifts, which will be offset against additional income that we have already found. Support the balance sheet stability by 2030 because there is still significant pressures that are going through the medium to longer term plan through cities estate, and this needs to be done through income generation. For both of the areas, we are also recommending that the capital programmes are reviewed against the Gateway 1 and 2s. These are the ones that have already been approved by committees, and these are actually ones that have not started. So this is looking at what do we need to do in relation to, are these still priority, or do we need to reprioritise those elsewhere? Also looking at Gateway 6, to look at how we closing off and actually using the underspends elsewhere. And again, overall identifying £10 million income generation across both funds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sonia. So I think this is really, as you can see, very early stages here. Just to go very quickly, I made 2 points at, I think, at RAS last week. One, if you look at City Fund, before the fair funding review, we had identified a potential gap on City Fund of £26 million. That's changing, but that's a significant amount of money. I think we have to get real. I think on both funds here, we're now in a position where City Estate, I think we can probably get the balance sheet in good shape, but it's not until 2030 we start to see that real change. We just have to think, we have to get real about the financial pressures we're facing. We have to think long term here as well. And I think in terms of once the process really starts, we have to think strategically as well. We can't have individual areas. They can all have their says, but ultimately we're going to have to take some pretty difficult decisions on a top-down basis, because we have to look strategically from what is feasible and what is not feasible from a corporation perspective, trying to take into account all the views of those underlying areas and departments. You can see the internal, there's factors here. I've intentionally tried to avoid talking about pay review and Ambition 25, but we know that's an issue as well. And we have got a lot of, we already mentioned some of the issues here when you're talking about projects. Slow decision making it's a killer as far as we're concerned, and so we have to change our culture even faster than what we have, because we've got the next 2 or 3 years are going to be really, really difficult. And fortunately for me, I've only got less than 18 months to go now in this role, so that's very lucky. But you can see we got internal challenges and external challenges. But I think all we can do at the moment is perhaps to give that steer to the finance team. There's a lot of modelling goes on here. And in response to your question, Anna, we don't really get much further detail probably until January next year, but there's a lot of work goes on here. I'm going to stop there. Steve, you've got a question?
Well, it might be a statement, Jack. I mean, you referenced Ambition 25, and I think we had a robust conversation in corporate services with the town clerk about Ambition 25, which was in the non-public, so I'll be careful what I say here. But it is the elephant in the room, Chair. And I don't think you can just let it go the way that you just let it go, because I believe, and I believe, that the way that we're dealing with the changes that the corporation need to undertake is the wrong way round. And we really need to, and the town clerk didn't like me saying this in corporate services, but I think we really need to take a pause and just make sure that what we're doing is the right way of doing it. Because if we don't, then I think, particularly the context we're now talking about where we're going with City Fund, I think we will get ourselves into even more trouble than we're currently in.
I'm not letting it go, Stephen. Absolutely. I'm just the purpose of this discussion. I just want to go further down the line. It's an integral part, and as you know, I'm pretty similar in my views to you. But for the purpose of this discussion, I just didn't want to get into any detail on it. Any more questions, Sandra?
Just to say, as you know, I have the same view on Ambition 25.
No. We're very conscious of that. Andrew.
Yeah, just 2 points. So the biggest risks, the way I at least look at this, and we had a very long discussion at RAS last week about it. Internally, Ambition 25 has been mentioned in a similar position to fellow members. I made the suggestion, and I think officers are looking into it, that we do have a briefing session, especially for members who don't sit on Corporate Services Committee. So this is specifically from, I might be biased over here. So this is for members who sit on PNR and finance. And I know officers are looking to do a session on Ambition 25 for that. I'll leave that bit over there, but that's the internal bit. The external bit, which is the other challenge for us, and I think it was the second to bottom bullet point, which was on the screen that Sonia presented, is looking at our capital program.
Yeah.
We do need to look at that because that's where the challenges are, which again, to Steve's point, related to the previous question that you asked as well. Those are the two big challenges as I see it, one internal, one external, one on revenue, one on capital, that we need to get our heads around. But I know officers are working to get something in place to make us feel comfortable before we prove anything.
Okay. So I think what I'm after, members, really is that we've especially put Ambition 25 on that slide. It's not forgotten, but I think what I'm really after is, are there any glaring omissions here in terms of getting the finance team to start going? Are there any glaring omissions or anything that appears to be totally wrong? Because it's a long old exercise. Steve, and then Bronnie.
Again, Chair. So I just don't think we are radical enough in the way that we are approaching this, and maybe there will be opportunities and policy resources away data to think a bit more about this. But you know, there are fundamental issues about the cost of some of our services, where we have to make decisions about, are we prepared to carry on paying an awful lot of money for a service that in other contexts would be a lot cheaper, and there's rationale why we might do that. But we actually at least need to get those things on the agenda and be clear about why we're doing that within the context of the money that we're going to have to save in the next few years.
Thank you. Bronnie.
I look forward to briefing on Ambition 25 because I have no idea what you're talking about. The one thing I did notice, which I had heard sort of whisperings on, it's the first time I've seen it on paper, is a comment about the national lead force for fraud. And I think that's something which certainly I'd like to learn a little bit more about it, rather than a single line on a threat going forward. And the implications, I don't know whether the right place to ask the question is, but it is clearly quite a big impact.
Yeah. Okay, you are, Karen.
Thank you, members. Mr. Goodman's comment about radical enough, I really welcome that. And I think the time on how radical do we need to be comes when we understand the fair funding review and where our court funding is going to land. But I think the comment on looking at what we're doing, particularly in City Fund. I think in Cities Estate, I take a great deal of comfort that members have made some very difficult decisions, particularly the Markets Route relocation, and that has restored the financial stability of Cities Estate. We're not out of the woods, but at least it restored the downward trajectory. On City Fund, it is a downward trajectory. So the radical options need to be on the table. I think Policy and Resources Away Day is the first stage in that. We have set as part of the budget setting a £10 million income target because we need to achieve that for 26-27. This goes to the heart of where we have done cuts in the past. We have not been successful on generating more income. So a focus this year, while we've got some breathing space to think about the more radical solutions, is let's get the income generation over the wire, because that should be the easier bit than doing the radical. In terms of the National Lead Force and fraud, where Police Authority Board has been looking very carefully at this, and of course there are things that we
public domain
we may want to look at in non-public.
Thank you.
So I think, thank you, Jen. So I think we can pick up that last, but we'll just pick it up early on in non-public. Yes. Okay. Sandra.
Yes, just I think this may already be in your minds, that we ought to look very carefully at our unit cost of some of our services, because we don't actually have many benefits of scale. So some of our services must be being produced at quite an expensive unit cost. And if we did some benchmarking, we might be able to identify those and work out how else we could provide those services.
Which is back to Tim's point earlier. I think that's a really good point again, but I don't know, we can't do anything with it here.
I think that the whole point about the benchmark is really well made. So yes, we have benchmarked our services and they tell us that it's expensive. So the question is then, what do we do about it? And that's where I think the radical thinking needs to come in. Thank you.
So that's quite a coordinated set of concerns there, which I think is good. Can we note those concerns? Can we agree this steer? Can we not forget Ambition 25? and at least task the finance team to start their work. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 11 is an update from internal audit around insurance, financial control report of the Chamberlain for information, page 71.
Matt, did you want to speak to this very quickly?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll just say a few brief words. So the report is titled Financial Control Overview, but really think of this in terms of internal control just generally. So in the paper, I've attempted to set out briefly why internal control is a good thing, why it's important. The thing that is important that members take away is that within the organisation, we do have a generally effective control environment, but what we've seen over time is that the application of that control framework has eroded a little. Now, that's not entirely unexpected, given that over the past number of years, we've seen efficiency savings, which have actually scaled back some of the activities of the enabling functions across the organisation. They actually play quite an important role in maintaining the effectiveness of the application of the internal control environment. So I refer in the paper to the Institute of Internal Auditors 3 lines model. So, previously that was referred to as the 3 lines of defence. I think the defence word was taken away because it's not seen as constructive language, but those enabling functions perform a key role in that second line. And actually, as we're seeing more delegation to colleagues within departments, management to make decisions and so on, and a bit less check-in compliance work, that is a key contributor to the application of the control framework diminishing over time. So really what with the Chamberlain, I'm and my team are working on some education activities. Like throughout the work of internal audit, we're promoting the importance of that second line function, looking for opportunities to strengthen that and add a bit more weight. One thing I would just say about compliance activity generally, I don't think that the value of that work is seen or really appreciated when it's working effectively, but you miss it when it's gone. And I'll reserve any questions.
Thank you. I just got one question. I've got a question, a public question, which went to the chairman of policy. I've got to answer it. The use of corporation credit cards. Are you happy that the process of control works, and are they still providing value for money? It's quite a difficult question to answer, but just be brief, Matt, because I've got to do an answer anyhow.
So overall, the application of the credit cards, we're not seeing 100% conformance with the expectations, the control framework there. It's reasonably steady, probably around 75%. But do they remain an effective solution for us? Yes, they do. So one thing I would say that's different to how we use purchase cards in this organisation to perhaps the commercial world, they're not predominantly used for expenses. So they're not for the expenses of employees. We've got a completely different system for reimbursing expenses to employees. They're mainly used in our organisation for low value operational purchases, and it is a timely, agile and efficient and effective way of making those purchases. Do I think that we should see more consistency in terms of making sure receipts are provided and expense reports submitted on time? Yes, and there's a role for line management to play in enforcing.
And that's on your agenda?
Yes, yeah, we're constantly working on that with finance colleagues. Yeah,
thank you. I think Adam, do you have a question, Adam?
I did, yes. I welcome the training initiative. I'm just wondering how you're going to measure success of this.
One way that we look at the application of the control framework as part of our ongoing work. So I've been raising this as a theme, an emerging theme through the work of internal audit over the past couple of years. So I comment on that in my annual report, and when we evaluate our findings, we've got indicators that we use against them to say whether it's an absence of a control or the application of a control. So we collect data that builds a picture as to how well the controls are being applied. So it won't tell us directly how effective our education program is, but if we see an increase in conformance, then we know we're moving in the right direction.
Karen, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think there's a key opportunity to nip it in the bud. So we've had a very strong control environment for many years, but we are seeing a dip in the level of the application of those controls. I think the work that Finance Leadership Group, which are the finance leads across the organisation, need to do in this space is to ensure that we understand where things may be slipping and why, and address it. So I think that whole piece of work about the use of procurement cards, those are looked at on a monthly basis. We get exception reporting. We know exactly where. And the importance of receipts, for instance, is our ability to reclaim VAT. So that is any slip in that is monitored extremely carefully and therefore taken up. So I think the role of the finance business partners as they move away from doing the a lot of the manual work using the current Oracle system and a lot of the legacy systems we've got, as we get into Programme Sapphire and that gets implemented, then we're releasing the finance business partners. But at the moment, the focus needs to be nipping it in the bud so that we don't see a deterioration in the robust internal controls which are in place. We need to see the compliance with it.
Thank you. Adam, do you have a follow-up? No, Anne, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a question about paragraph 6 about the reactive correction, an increase in volume. Is that continuing, or has there been an improvement?
So like this is a recent observation. And that relates to the nature of the recommendations. The reactive correction I've referred to is the nature of our recommendations, where we're saying actually management needs to do more to apply the control framework as it is. So we're not saying you need to change your process. We're saying you need to conform with the documented process. So I can't, I'll be able to tell you, say, in a year's time how that's, whether that's improved or not. But at the moment, that's an observation. Because that's had an impact on purchase orders in particular. It's not purchase orders necessarily. It's a range of controls. It's just, I would say, it's a general move away from the consistent application of control framework. So where if you like, there's more freedom to act. Management or colleagues are less inclined to do things exactly as expected.
Follow the rules.
Thank you. Nick, you had a question.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the Chamberlain's comments on that, because the idea of 75% compliance being anything other than unsatisfactory, that needs a lot of work being done on it.
Well, I tell you what, I think that's been really helpful. I think Chamberlain, given those comments, I wonder if we could have a follow-up on this in 6 months' time. I just feel there's nothing material here, but there's just a few unanswered questions which I'd quite like to get answered or reassured that progress is being made. I mean, it's really obviously audit and risk, but I think as Finance Committee, it'd be quite good to get some sort of short overview on progress.
Thank you, Chairman. I really welcome that. I think it's the audit and risk flagging a trend that has been noticed across the organisation and saying Finance Committee needs to have a look at this level of internal control. So I welcome that. We'll come back and see.
Thank you. So we'll put that on our work programme.
Thank you.
Chairman, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Shouldn't we just refer it to audit and risk and just have a very brief report? I know you like to slim down agendas and papers. It seems odd that we should have it coming to both committees.
Well, no, I'm assuming it's part and parcel of what they're doing, James. But I just think, given what we've heard, I think it'd be quite reassuring for members of finance just to get a, this is, bearing in mind Adam's paper, a 2-page paper would be wonderful in December, just to give us a reassurance on what's happening.
I think we should ask the past chairman of Audit and Risk about his view on the balance between this committee and Audit and Risk.
It feels like a little bit of overstretch, doesn't it?
It's called a hospital pass, right?
I'm not going to go there.
I think this committee is the responsible committee for financial control throughout the organisation. So I think audit is flagging to you, committee members, that something needs to be done. Thank you.
And I think all we're saying is just let us know how it's moving in 6 months' time. And I'm not taking away anything from audit risk, for whom
I'm very persuaded. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we move on then, please?
Chairman, thank you. Item 12 is the ERP programme update quarterly report, the Chamberlain, for information, page 75. It's the public version of this report, members. There is a non-public paper later on the agenda.
And I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Chairman, do you want to ask Simon to do something? I think this is pretty straightforward.
I'd say just to share the good news with a very short report. We could have written an awful lot in there, and perhaps we still need to work on the dashboards to give you that sense of what's happening. But a huge amount has been delivered. We are almost there with the HR side of the implementation, and that is providing tremendous benefits to the organisation. Obviously, that was always going to be easier than finance because of the nature of the systems that people were using in the past. But let's not take away the astonishing success that we've had so far on that.
No, thank you. Just to pick up one point I made in call over, you'll see there's a slightly unsatisfactory a TBC on paragraph 6 on page 76, which
yes.
I thought would be quite good to get more comment on that. I think in finance terms, we want to see the output of this, but in terms of very simple numbers, I think we've got a budget of just under 20 million and a big contingency of about 8. We don't want to go into that contingency if at all possible, but I just think that's the financial overview, because the perceived improvements for HR and financial management are very substantial. But I think this is a really important project, and as I made the point yet again, we've seen IT projects go belly up all over the country. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, I agree that we're making good progress, but I have communicated with the Chamberlain about Derby City Council, who are shouting all over the local government sphere that they've introduced a set of AI systems that are saving them £7.5 million annually. And so I suppose the question is we obviously have to do this. We have to complete this. This must not go wrong. But I just wonder whether we could have some sort of comment about how behind the curve we think we are in looking at possible AI initiatives that might help us. Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to take that now?
Yes, if I could. So AI and automation, absolutely key to efficiency going forwards. However, it's only as good as the data that underpins it. And I think certainly Programme Sapphire has demonstrated, when we look at the HR data and the amount of work it's taken to cleanse that we have got a long way to go on ensuring the data quality underpinning the organisation. So in terms of AI, we are not where we want to be. We have just launched the HR bot. So that is an AI function that people can use across the whole organisation to ask any questions on HR policy, and it will answer it. So in terms of what our current strategy is, it's do the AI on everything that is policy related, because those are clear, unambiguous, they are there, and we can automate all the questions around that. So we've got another 2 in development, one around governance, one around health and safety. So those will be done. In terms of Derby and the efficiency, some of it was potentially outsourcing or insourcing currently outsourced contracts, but there is quite a bit around the actual automation and certainly of the contact centres, so how people contact the organisation, which we are behind on and we are working on. So that's something you can expect to see in the 26-27 budget requests for capital programmes.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you. Can I just ask Chamberlain, on page 77, payroll at December 2025, introducing a new system in December, is that the right thing to do? Payroll in December is paid earlier. It's one of the months where it's not the usual time. Are you confident that you won't be cancelling Christmas? Thank you.
Will I take that under item 23, please, in non-public?
Okay.
All
right. Okay.
And just for public assurance, we won't be cancelling Christmas, although the parliamentarians did during the Civil War within the city.
Okay, so we'll pick that up in a minute. Thank you. We have to note and agree that paper. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 13 is the risk management update report for the Chamberlain for information, page 83.
I mean, Chamberlain, we slightly mentioned these 2 items already. I don't think we need to repeat them. You can see the 2 items under paragraphs 5 and 6. I don't think at this stage we need to go any further. Can we just note that paper? Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 14 are decisions taken under the delegated authority and issues procedures since our last meeting for information, page 85 through 92.
I think we just note those. Thank you. Yep.
Item 15, Chairman, questions on matters related to work of the committee.
I'm not aware of any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 16, any other business that you
I'm
consider
going to pick
urgent?
up one other business in non-public, but I'll wait for that.
Thank you. Item, oh,
Sorry.
excuse me.
Under any other business, I guess we had the debate at Cocoa last week. And I was just wondering.
I was going to pick that up in non-public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 17, are members now content to exclude the public at this stage? Thank you.